Welcome to Lesson 8 and the final lesson of Advanced Saxophone Lessons Made Easy for you do-it-yourselfers. Before you begin trying to fix your saxophone yourself, I always recommend that if you have a major problem with your horn such as leaks, dents, or worn-out pads, that you take the horn to a professional repairman. However, I also recognize there are times when you have to perform the next day or even the next hour, and there is no time to have your horn repaired professionally. This lesson is to guide you during those times. Basic saxophone maintenance. In order to avoid most major problems that require repair, here are a few simple maintenance tips to keep your horn looking good and playing its best. One main item that is intended to help your saxophone can also be one that does the most damage if not used properly. More than a few students believe that the long fuzzy swab you leave in your horn is the best thing ever invented for wind instruments. I am not one of them. I have had many friends who are repairmen, and they agree that this swab does more harm than good in most cases. The reason for this is that most students will play their sax for an hour or so in band, get the inside all moist with saliva, stick the swab in, and leave it there until the next band class. This causes two major problems. First, instead of drying the moisture, the swab holds on to the moisture and the inside of the horn never has a chance to dry out. Over a short amount of time, the pads wear out and will have to be replaced. The other main problem is that the fuzz can get stuck to the pads and throughout the inside of the instrument. This will cause leaks that will have to be remedied by a repairman. Besides that, you get a bunch of blue or yellow fuzz all over your case and it's not easy to clean. The swab can be a good thing if you were to take the time to swab your horn out first, removing most of the moisture. However, if you did that, why would you need a big fuzzy swab anyway? My advice is to avoid the repairman's friend, if at all possible. The best way to swab out your horn is to make a swab yourself. You can buy an inexpensive handkerchief, cheesecloth, or silk cloth, a string, and a lead weight. At most music stores, you can find a swab made for clarinet that will work well also. Just make sure you have a long enough string and try to avoid using swabs with brushes attached. If you do buy one, simply cut that part of the swab off. When you have a good swab, I recommend swabbing your horn about every hour or so when you are practicing, especially before you are going to leave the horn in the case for an extended period of time. To use the swab, you will simply drop the weight into the bell and put as much of it into the bell as you can. So place the anchor in the bell first. Get as much string in there as you can. And then turn the saxophone over for the string to come out and pull the string and the swab through the horn. I also do the same with the neck to keep that clean. I do not recommend using the swab to clean the mouthpiece because this can wear down the facing of the mouthpiece over time. To clean the mouthpiece, hold it under lukewarm water, not hot water, for several seconds. You may need to rub any of the white calcium deposits where your mouth goes with your fingers, then wipe it dry with a soft cloth. When you are sick, it is very important to disinfect your mouthpiece with rubbing alcohol or a disinfecting spray each time you play. This will keep you from being reinfected right after you think you're feeling better. Using the same reed once your health improves is not recommended. Pads will mostly take care of themselves if you swab out your horn on a regular basis. Some repairmen recommend treating pads, especially new ones, with a leather protector such as neat's foot oil. I would recommend talking with a repairman before doing this to make sure it is done properly. Too much oil can damage the pads. If your pads are very dirty or sticky, an easy way to clean them is to use a clean piece of paper or a crisp dollar bill. Fold or tear the paper to fit under the sticky key. I will use the low C-sharp key as an example since it's easier to show. You simply open the key and place the paper over the tone hole and then close the key. While applying a small amount of pressure, pull the paper out quickly to remove most of the gunk. Repeat as many times as necessary. You can also place a small amount of baking soda on the paper to help with very sticky pads. This works well with keys that stay closed when your horn is in the case. I have to use this technique many times on the G sharp key. I recommend doing this with all of your pads about once a month to keep them clean and quiet. Here are some other recommendations for general care. Make sure your horn fits your case. You should not be able to slide the saxophone in either direction when it is in the case. If you can, go to your local music store and find an end plug that will fill in any gaps. Every few months, oil points of the post where the screws are. This will keep the action moving freely and quietly. Replace any corks or felts that have hardened or fallen off. This will reduce most of the key noise. Pick up your saxophone by the bell, not by the neck or the posts. Vacuum your case whenever you notice fuzz or dirt. This will keep it from getting on the pads. If you have to play your horn in the rain or your horn gets wet for any other reasons, leave your sax in the case with the lid open overnight so that it can dry out completely. If you do not, you will have many interesting things growing in your case that will not smell very good, and your pads will fall off. Take a few minutes to wipe off your horn with a polishing cloth each time you play. This will help avoid rust from developing and keep your horn looking good. Let's discuss some basic saxophone repairs. Now that you know how to avoid the common ailments, here are a few things you can do when an unexpected problem does come up. When I worked at a music store, 9 of 10 saxophones that came in for repair had one of 3 problems. A spring had popped off, the horn had a leak, or a cork or felt had fallen off. The other repairs were for major body damage from dropping the horn or it being run over by a truck. These unexpected problems can happen to anyone and usually happen moments before a performance. The best way to be prepared for this is to have a small toolkit with you at all times. All you need is an inexpensive set of small screwdrivers, a rubber band, and a small tube of pad or cork cement. Do not use super glue because it can do significant damage to the horn. Springs. In the event a spring pops off, it is very easy to fix if you understand how the spring works. Take a few moments to look closely at your saxophone. Notice in particular how the spring influences the movement of each key. You should see the key pushing against the spring in order to open or close the tone hole. The spring causes tension on the key when it is not in a state of rest, so that when you do open or close it, the key goes back to its original position smoothly. When the spring is not in the correct place, the key will either stay open or stay closed and cause problems playing the intended note. When you notice a spring has popped off, causing the key to not function properly, simply use a small flathead screwdriver and push the spring back in place. Also, if you notice the key is too hard or too easy to push, you can adjust the tension in the spring by pulling or pushing it a little farther than it should in its stretched position. Be careful not to bend it too much or it will break. If the spring has broken off, you will need a repairman to properly install a new one. Leaks. When you are having trouble getting your low notes to speak or hear air leaking out, chances are one or more tone holes are not completely covered. This can be caused by accidentally banging the horn against a solid object, picking up the horn by something other than the bell, or a key can even get snagged on something and bend. The best way to check this is to use a leak light. It is a long, narrow fluorescent light with a long cord you can fit down the body of your saxophone. With the light in your horn, turn off all other lights in the room and close all of the keys playing a low B flat. Examine the tone holes all the way around the horn. You should see no light shining through any of the holes. If you do, there is a leak and that key needs to be adjusted. The most common leaks are found in the lower stack, usually E key or D key. If you do not have access to a leak light, you can use a thin piece of paper or a small piece of cassette tape, if anyone still has those lying around, taped to the end of a straw. Place the paper under the key, press down on the key, and slide the paper out. There should be equal resistance all the way around the hole. After you have found a leak, there are different ways you can fix it. I do recommend that you take the horn to a professional repairman if you have time. If you simply cannot wait, here are some things you can do for a quick fix. If the leak is on a large key that is easily accessible, you can ever so slightly bend the key in the direction of the leak. Think of bending it up or down on one side, similar to a seesaw. Do not bend it sideways. Whichever side the leak is on, make a slight bend to the lower side of the key. It should only require a very minor adjustment, so go slowly. If the leak is in the front or back of the key, chances are the adjustment screws are off. Use your screwdriver to tighten or loosen the adjustment screw for that particular key as needed. Again, it only needs to be a slight adjustment. Don't overdo it. Also, keep an eye on the other keys that are near the one you are adjusting. Many times they are connected, and if you adjust one, all of them are affected. If you are noticing a leak in the upper stack near the neck, you can use a rubber band for a temporary fix. Just wrap the rubber band around the key that is leaking and it should close firmly. Please, please, please do not leave the rubber band on the saxophone for more than a week. Have the leak professionally fixed as soon as possible. I have seen saxophones that had rubber bands stuck to them, and we had to slice them off with a blade. It also can leave a terrible mess on the saxophone lacquer. Corks and felts. These are crucial to keeping the action of the saxophone quiet. They are also used for adjusting the heights of different keys. Corks tend to fall off now and then from either getting caught on something and being ripped off, or from not being installed with the proper adhesive. Regardless of the reason, when they fall off, you usually notice it right away. If you can save the piece that fell off, great, use it. If not, you will have to buy a sheet of cork or a long piece of felt and cut it to the size you need. It is a good idea to have a little available just in case. I use basic pad and cork cement that you can buy in the hardware department in most stores. Check with your repairman to see what they recommend. The ones I know use glue sticks and heat them with a propane torch. The tube of cement is much easier to use for a quick fix. Place a small amount of cement on both the cork and the body of the saxophone. Let it set for about a minute or two before bonding the cork in place. Apply pressure on the cork for about 45 seconds and you should be good to go. These are a few simple repairs you can do yourself when in a pinch. However, to save additional heartache down the road, take your instrument to a qualified repairman as soon as possible so they can verify your quick fix will not cause more harm than good. Lastly, if you have an older saxophone or have not had yours looked at by a repairman in a while, drop it off and let them perform a thorough check. It will not cost as much as you may think, and it is well worth the investment to ensure the horn is free of problems and will allow you to perform at your best.